So here, you're in downtown. So far, I obviously got to just ask you, you've been here now a couple days. First impressions, is this the first time you've been here?
It is, and I really love BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. and I think that there is this whole idea of collision is an important one. And I think that live, work, play, involve, pedestrian involvement, startups, maker movements are all really prescient trends that will only get bigger and better.
So you've been impressed with some of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a long way to go, but I can see, I see the trajectory.
Right.
And
Great.
that's the important thing.
So you see the vision. Good. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. So you've done a lot of different things. We talked about a little bit, but first off, one of the more interesting things I think to a lot of people is that you started Atari and you employed Steve Jobs. You were like one of the first people to employ Steve Jobs.
Right.
And some have even said, like Walter Isaacson, who wrote his biography, was literally said, you launched his career, Steve Jobs' career. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've always believed that the reason Silicon Valley has as many startups is that everybody has worked next to somebody that has left, done a startup, and done well. And they immediately say, he was an idiot. And so when I think of that, I look at Steve and I'm just wondering if that was what he was saying. No. No, but Steve and I became good friends, and I actually didn't realize that he perceived me to be as much of a mentor as it was described in the Isaacson's book.
Right.
I just thought we were kind of hanging out and talking business.
Right.
But it was really interesting, and Steve had really 2 or 3 characteristics that I really think everybody should be aware of. And he had some that you should forget, but that's another story. But the most important thing is act. Just do. Always do things. And in the back of your mind, sort of look at things that you do that are going towards life and things that you do that are going away from life. And you'd be surprised how many things that we can do that take us out of life. But when you're acting, when you're doing, and I'm not saying acting like in a movie or what have you, but just do things. Invent, create, make, push, focus, research. All of these things are really aspirational. And the crazy thing about it is when you do that, you're happy. The more passive your life is, the more you're trying to escape, you will go into a depression that is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And the along with Brain Rush, my current project, mm-hmm. I've been going really down this rabbit hole of brain research, mm-hmm. and trying to understand from a real nuts and bolts, molecule by molecule basis, how do we learn?
Yeah. And
how can we optimize that process? But it dovetails into senility, lack of cognizance and mental plasticity as you get older. And even though I don't look it, I'm really old. and and so time's winged chariot draweth near. And so I feel like I don't mind getting old, I just don't want to get dumb.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So how do you've launched this product, Brain Rush. Actually, give a little bit of background. What is that all about so that people know?
Brain Rush is a software package that uses core brain elements to teach any subject at least 10 times faster, and we believe once we get it fine-tuned, we'll get 20 to 30 times faster. But anyway, we're at the dawn of Education 3.0. Education 1.0 was the one-room schoolhouse, one-on-one mentorship, the Socratic discussion group around the olive tree. And then there was the 2.0, which was the industrialization of education. The 30 kids in the classroom, sage on the stage, you know, talk, you know, whack you on the knuckles if you don't learn it, a little shit. And so then Education 3.0 really couldn't have happened 5 years ago. We're in the middle of a perfect storm. One, robust networks. If you've ever run a company, even 7 or 8 years ago, if you had 30 people on the computer, you had to have a sysop to keep the damn thing running. I mean, it was just, you know, robust, they weren't.
Right.
Things would break. Two, affordable hardware. I mean, right now, you can buy a tablet out of India, 35 bucks, touchscreen.
Wow.
You know?
That's crazy.
So
right.
all of a sudden, it's affordable.
Right.
Third, the political climate, and remember, most education throughout the world is a government agency that is not responsive in any way to the customer, i.e. the student.
Right.
Their constituency is all the mean, dirty, rotten people that are running the schools and sucking it dry. In Los Angeles, for example, the cost of a school is equivalent per square foot to the Ritz-Carlton. But when I go into a school, I don't see any
It doesn't look the same, right?
It doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
You know, there's something.
Right.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
but that's because the kids don't need it. Anyway.
Oh wow. Yeah. So no. So basically, with Brain Rush, then you're trying to teach people faster, and obviously.
Oh yeah, maybe I can tell you some of the.
Yeah.
I'm monopolizing that.
No, we want to hear it. We don't
Okay.
want to hear me talk. We got a lot of that.
Education 3.0 actually runs on 5 and maybe 7 principles. The last two, number 6 and 7, are really hard, but the first 5 are good. Number 1, extreme time pressure. That hyper-focuses the student. Can't think about the girl sitting in front of them, can't think about what they're going to do at night.
So pressure as in, how do you do that?
In the
Like-
presence.
Okay.
So basically, whatever you do, you make sure that the student has to be in the present, totally focused. 2, has to be active. Active means it has to go through the thalamus, which is the switchboard. And so you not only have to think about something, but you have to make a decision and act on it. Okay? So it's active. If you put a person in an fMRI and you watch their brain patterns while they're reading a book, nobody home. Watch a movie, nobody home. Watch a lecture, negative people home. the dog and the cat is even left. But the minute you ask them to answer a question, think about it to the point where they have to respond, everything lights up. And that's the learning moment. Even if the answer is wrong, even if it's 2 to 6. So that's 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
4, the brain is designed to forget, not to remember.
Can you say that again?
Mine
'Cause I wanna-
works really well
say it
there.
again, just in case. I missed it. Can you say that again?
The brain is designed to forget,
Okay.
not to remember.
Got it. Okay.
Otherwise, we would have advertisements running out of our ears,
Right. Yeah.
but it's not happening. So, in order to get anything that you can remember, it turns out that spaced repetition is the cool thing. And when you're first introduced to a concept, it generally takes 2, 3, maybe even 4 repetitions.
Can
and
you
all of a
email
sudden-
these to us? Like,
What?
Is there some way we can get these somewhere? I just want to make sure we remember all these.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I'll send you the,
Okay.
you know, I've actually got some really, really brilliant slides
Okay.
that you didn't want me to bring, but
Yeah.
oh well.
We wanted to hear it from you. Oh, jab. But we wanted to talk to you. That's why. So we're
That's okay.
Okay.
Anyway, and so Spaced repetition is really about understanding. I mean, the underlying principle is, what is your decay rate? Everybody has a decay rate. And the decay rate changes based on subject. Like your decay rate on mathematics is less than my decay rate on history.
Okay.
Like we have some affinities, but I'll go into that a little bit later. So anyway, it turns out that if you can engage in the software after 2 or 3 repetitions, the next day, if you do another repeat, and then maybe a week later, man, that just locks it in. And so figuring out what those right times, because you want to refresh just before you forget something on those things. I believe, now here's the big killer. I believe that we can remember 100% of what we learned in high school and college for the rest of our lives through spaced repetition algorithms.
Wow.
You know, just basically log in 1 hour a week,
go through.
and you just review at the appropriate times, and all of a sudden, you'll still be able to do a partial differential equation, though I've never needed to since I graduated.
Not even just walking down the street. Never.
You know, I go down and talk about the partial differentials, and I'd feel very, very smug. Anyway, principle 5. Principle 5 is really is adaptive, and it turns out that everybody is a little bit different. And what you want to be able to do is keep everybody right up against that edge of just about failing. That's how aggressive the time things and the really complexity. Right. And you know, that's only 4. What's the 5th?
5, I think.
What?
That was 5.
It's 4.
Yeah.
1, hyper focus. 2, active. 3, spaced repetition.
4, forgot.
Huh? 4 is adaptive. And so.
We forgot what we forgot. What do we forget?
I've been doing this.
Yeah, that's the one we're missing.
Okay.
We forgot that one.
The 5th, mastery.
Mastery.
Play to mastery is really, really important because it changes your attitude towards something. When you say, oh, gee, I can kind of slip by and get a gentleman's C, and if I don't really understand how to factor a polynomial, it's going to be okay. Whereas if the software requires you to be complete, rock and roll. And so those 3 things, we've got kids who, in Spanish 1, we did our alpha test with Spanish vocabulary, who ended up after year 1, and this was a whole class, with a 1,500-word vocabulary.
Wow.
They could speak it, spell it, understand it when spoken to. They could understand the concept when it was heard. I mean, there's actually 6 things you need to learn for every word, believe it or not. Anyway, but anyway, that's down a rabbit
That's a lot of stuff to remember.
But anyway, so for the first time, Spanish 1 teachers could conduct their complete class in Spanish, where they were working on syntax and grammar and all the other stuff.
So how does that apply then? I mean, it spurred, Rosetta Stone kind of stuff. Is it, like, what are you doing? It's a software that'll be launched soon?
Yeah. What we've done is we've defined 12 learning engines.
Right.
We have 3 that are launched, and they're as simple as sort of adaptive secret sauce flashcards. So they look like flashcards, they act like flashcards, but they adapt and they do all kinds of interesting algorithms. And the idea is we want every teacher, every person who wants to learn something, they can actually plug whatever they want to learn into our adaptive engine.
And then,
so we're kind of Wikipedia.
Right.
We want to crowdsource the curation and then.
So it reminds me a little bit of, are you familiar with SQ3R?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of. You're just going through those steps. Like, how many people have used SQ3R studying? 1 person? You get a shirt. What size shirt do you wear? I already gave you one. Okay, I'll have to give you something else. Sticker. We'll get you a sticker. So anyway, it's survey, question, read, recite, repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently I remember that.
But ours is really good.
But so this is a new. But that's like that's a paper version, right? Like that's a very like intensive.
Oh yeah.
Process. Like I hated it when I was studying.
Yeah,
I mean it's just like a lot of work.
Yeah, this stuff just works so well.
Yeah.
I mean, listen. If I've got school education is the second largest industry in the world. Basically, every country in the world spends between 5 and 7% of their GDP on education.
Right.
If I've got something that's 10 times faster, and I can't turn it into a multi-million-dollar business and just really kick it out of the park, shame on me.
Heard it here first.
Yeah.
No, seriously, you're right. There's a lot that can be done in education. Definitely turn that paper process of literally writing out note cards and going through them into something that's a little bit easier to follow. It sounds like a great opportunity.
See, the next big wave of competition is really going to be on creativity,
right,
and problem solving. And quite candidly, I think that we are teaching our kids not the right things. And I think that they're really starting to reject that. I mean, in some ways, we've reinstituted and figured out, after it's been outlawed for 200 years, indentured servitude. Tell me why student loans, $150,000, $200,000 of student loans, isn't an indenture. Of course it is.
Right.
And so just at the time that people want to start a family and maybe buy a house or something like that, they've got this crushing thing.
Yeah.
And higher education has been escalating faster in cost with less productivity. Only 40% of
Let's hear a clap. Yeah.
Plus, 40% of college graduates are actually employed in subjects in a job that uses their specialty.
40%.
40%.
Wow.
If.
Right.
And that's a really broad thing.
That's
so anyway.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So
I can go down these rat holes all the time.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We talked about education. I want to talk about advice, so on creativity. So what would you tell, like, a business that's, how do you learn to be more creative? Like, how do you take that on?
The first thing is to be massively curious, because curiosity is the forcing function to learn a lot of different things. And creativity is, if you kind of break it up into its component parts, it's really synthesis of disparate ideas. And a lot of times, people don't have those disparate ideas. Like, how did the video game come about?
Yeah, I wanted to ask that, actually.
I was putting myself through college at an amusement park where the game center reported to me. It was kind of my MBA. And so I knew the economics of the coin-operated game business. The coin-operated game business, the deal was, you bought the coin-operated game for about $1,000, and over its lifetime, it'd make about $5,000 to $10,000. That was kind of where it was. And concurrently, I was going to engineering school at the University of Utah. A guy named Dr. David Evans decided that it was time to hook video screens up to computers. Wow. Now, this is in the middle 60s. That tells you how old I am. But if you were to have a computer screen hooked up to a big computer mainframe, there were basically 3 places in the world you could do it.
Right.
MIT, Stanford, the University of Utah. One of those doesn't belong. No, I'm being not fair, because the engineering school at the University of Utah is really good, but it's a little bit of an outlier.
Right.
And so I loved the games. I would basically break in to the computer lab. I have this really dark side.
You broke into the yeah. I was trying to get out of them in college.
Well, as an undergraduate, I always had a private office in the engineering building.
Yeah.
And you'd say, well, I thought that was for graduate students. Well, I found out that any bureaucracy can be beaten. And so a couple of weeks before school would start, I'd just go in, I'd find an empty office, I'd move my stuff in and put my name on the door. and
It's a good idea.
And if the guy that was assigned to it or what have you showed up, I'd say, "Oh, roomie," or I said, "I think you made a mistake." And sometimes they go away, and or sometimes they come back, and I'd have a roommate. That was no harm, no foul.
You never got tossed out.
Never got tossed out.
Oh wow.
Anyway, but once you had an office,
Right.
you had to get a key, you know?
Right.
And the key would work for the regular front door, so after it was locked up and everything like that, and you could pretty much soon
So
get
how
through
did you get a key? You just go.
Oh, you
ask-
just steal one and duplicate it.
You borrow your roommate's key and say, "I lost mine." Okay.
Yeah. Trust me, that is so easy.
Yeah. Once you're in there, you're in
yeah,
there.
you got to watch more James Bond. they do that all
So
the
I'm
time.
curious, are you gonna take one of these Ogden rooms or something? Just all of a sudden just show up and.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, but so, you know, playing those games all the time during the night wasn't great for my grade point, but that's okay. I might add, I got the most efficient bachelor's degree that anybody has ever had. My grade point when I graduated was 2.0000 to about 6 decimal places. I was 247th in a class of 247.
Wow.
Absolute bottom of my class. But I graduated.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is I did not a bit of work more than I needed to graduate. It was an optimized trajectory.
Awesome. All right. So
Anyway.
how did you take breaking into video to play video games and turn that into Atari?
Well, I knew as the night the day that if I could hit the economic constraints of the mechanical games that were in my arcade at the time, that they'd earn money. And so I only had one problem. How can I take a $2 million computer and turn it into something I could sell for $1,000?
Because that's what they cost back then,
Yeah.
$2 million.
Oh yeah, they were even if it was a $500,000 computer, how can I get it there?
Right.
And so, thank goodness I said, time's not right, and graduated, moved to California, and one day a computer came across my desk that was for $5,000, and I thought for myself, if I could get these to run 4 monitors, I could cluster them, and I could approach the $1,000 price point.
Right.
And of course, the machines were blisteringly fast. They went at 500 kilohertz. And so the math just didn't work. I couldn't get the refresh time. And what happened, but it started me down a pathway. And the pathway was I started building these little digital circuits that would offload things off of the mainframe. It was a little thing called a Data General Innova 800. That was the one that sort of triggered it.
Okay.
And then I kept running out of time, and I'd make another little circuit that would do the score. And then I did a little circuit that would do the
So
star field.
soldering.
Oh,
circuits.
soldering.
Yeah.
These were
This is hardcore
This is hardcore.
hardware.
Hard. You know, and you know, when I think about it, it was totally a stupid way to do it. But what happened is I finally abandoned the process. And I abandoned my work on it. I was going to really get it solved over the Thanksgiving holidays. And I got thinking, and it took me 2 days, and as they say, the light went on and the epiphany came, and I said, I'm going to throw away the mini computer. I'm going to do it all in hardware. And I figured out how to move all the things. And the early video games were simply state machines. They were like digital signal generators. They had no program. They were they weren't von Neumann architecture at all. And it worked. And all of the games that were in the coin-operated field and Pong and what have you until 1977 were all based on my patents.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So your first game, let's talk about that. What was your first game?
Thing called Computer Space.
Okay.
And it was really a version of Steve Russell's Space War, which he did on the PDP-1 in 1963. In 1963.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was good. It was a fun game. All my friends loved it. All my friends were engineers. You put that into a beer bar with a bunch of blue-collar workers, and they
couldn't get away from it.
They couldn't play it.
Oh, they couldn't play it.
Not at all.
Too complex.
Too complex. I mean, I don't know, how many of you know the Dutch Goose next to Stanford University?
1, 2, 3, 4. A couple
Well,
people.
basically, all the Stanford students hang out at the Dutch Goose. That was our test location.
Oh, okay.
Talk about a false positive.
That's funny.
But anyway, so we sold
evolved.
about $3 million worth of them, and I licensed it to another company, and then we decided to do this thing with a. Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty
Anyway,
good. I can't see that.
and it was it turned out to be
Huge.
just a monster. You could play it with one beer, with a beer in one hand.
Yeah.
But let me tell you the real thing, and Heidi will get a giggle out of this, because it was just at the dawn of women's lib, and women have better small muscle coordination than men do.
You heard it here.
So a short little blonde or brunette could whoop any guy in the bar. And so there were these Pong hustlers that were around that were just and it was like it would turn everybody's mind upside down, because here the captain of the football team was getting beaten by the head cheerleader. And it just didn't feel right with the mindset of the time.
Right.
And more than that, because it was the first time you could line up quarters along to reserve your place for the next time. And since it was a two-player game, it turned out to be women's choice all the time. And so girls, guys, in case you haven't figured this out, we are really stupid when it comes to relationships. I have 5 sons, and I tell them, I said, don't even think you're going to outthink them. Just give up and go with the flow, because and so women would invite whoever they wanted to off the bar to play Pong with them, and they'd be sitting there, and the number of people who got married by playing Pong, they came back and said that all, but it was really an interesting time in which there was an awful lot of sociology that was going on with this new thing as well. Anyway.
Yeah. Really interesting. How are we doing on time? Where's my timer? I don't even see him in the audience. We're good? Okay, okay, one more question before we get going into the Q&A. We're talking about a lot of gaming, and I'm sure that you all have questions. What's your favorite game?
Tempest.
Tempest, and why?
It represents a game that you really have to have lightning speed on, and I just think that the timing was really well crafted, and I was like that. Right now, I'm liking a game called Warcraft.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, Minecraft.
Minecraft. Okay.
Minecraft, And I can't play Halo. I like those kinds of games a lot, but every year that you get older, you lose about a millisecond of reaction time. And so as a result, if I try to play my kids, they just move the floor with me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, my ego is much too big.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so you don't want to get beat by, you created Atari. Like, you can't get beat by a 12-year-old.
Oh, yes, I can.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's
I
what
do
happens.
it often. And, you know, and my dad, you know, you got to be careful about too much hubris. And I think it was summed up by saying that the minute that you think that the sun shines out of your ass, all you have is an illuminated landing area.
Awesome. I'm picturing that. Okay, so with that, let's get some questions from the audience. Jen over here will be running around. Who's got the first question?
Actually, I've got a kind of a couple of questions. First off, I'd heard a story at one point that you guys had put one of these machines in a bar and then got called back because they wanted it out of there because it didn't work anymore, and it was basically because the damn thing was full.
Absolutely true. What we did is we just put it in a box, the first one, to just sense it. And we, you know, those metal things that are on Kiddie Ride, you know, that's a little box, and it holds about $200, which, you know, usually is okay, but it was insufficient.
All right. And one other thing, my father, I lived in Indonesia in 1976 to 78. Okay, my father ordered from Heathkit a Pong and tank battle game from Heathkit, and I think I probably had the first video game in Indonesia at the time. But did you guys, did Atari actually hook up with Heathkit, or how did that happen, or do you know?
They stole it.
Did they? Okay.
All right, over here.
I heard Timothy Leary speak about 25 or 30 years ago, a few years before he died, and he made a statement that the new mind-expanding drug was going to be computers, and his whole idea was to have this learning thing where you would get to the leading edge of anything that you want. Same thing as what you were talking about. I was just wondering, did you ever meet him or ever speak to him about?
You know, I did many years ago. I hadn't really cross-correlated that, but actually, you know, there's a lot of very interesting things that can happen. I mean, people are getting motion sickness with too much visual, you know, things in games and things like that. There's no question that we have very, very powerful mind-body connections. But the more different things that you do, the happier you'll be and the better you'll build your mind. I've been doing this thing called the dice game. And the dice game is about facing your fears. Make a list of everything that you don't think you can do and things that you kind of think you want to do someday but not this year. And then you put a number on each one, and then January 1 of every year you have to throw the dice and do it. And
It's a busy day.
And it's, well, no, it's in the ensuing year.
Okay, good, yeah.
And I have found that every time I've done it, I've been surprised. For example, I'm an engineer, massively dyslexic, and cannot spell. You know, I don't know if you can tell, but when I get thinking, I will often not finish sentences because my mind has gone on.
The next thing, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And it drives people around me crazy, but, you know, I just do that. Anyway, so I thought that the chance of me ever writing a book was exactly zero. But the dice came up, write a book.
Yep.
And so I did it, and I found out that I could actually do it. I mean, spell checkers are pretty good, grammar checkers are pretty good. You know, I had all kinds of crutches, and I wrote a science fiction book, and started sending it around, and with a few my daughter read it, and she said, you know, daughters are really, really mean to their fathers. And she said, Dad, that reads like stereo instructions.
Oh, no. Oh, my.
Did you ever think that you could describe things like he went into the building? What does the building look like? Is it a tall building? Is it a short building? Is it a green building? You know, it's just get about 4 buckets of adjectives and sprinkle them in the book liberally, and it'll be a better book. So I did that and a few things, but then.
So what was the name of that book?
The name of the book is Video Games 2071. It's a 100-year anniversary, and it's basically all about a new kind of video games that can. The nice thing about science fiction is that you don't have to worry about the technology. You know, it's a hand wave.
Just make it up.
And I thought that would be fun. And I went to get it published, and the guy says, no, it's a good book, but you want your first one to be a business book.
Right. And so you did do that.
Yeah, and so I did. So it's Finding the Next Steve Jobs. It'll drop. Oh, I thought I'd self-publish it.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it was a new publishing model, NetMinds, and all of a sudden Simon Schuster came and knocked on my door, and so now it'll be a hardbook.
And it's coming out
September 25th.
September 25th. All right. Fine.
And I want you to all go out and buy a whole bunch of them.
You need to move some books.
Not only that, they're good. You can eat them for breakfast.
Right. Well, you know, then that'll parlay into your science fiction book, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So really go wild. Send them to all your friends.
Right. Well,
and send them to your enemies as well, because they need it most.
But that book it's not science fiction. It's about literally how to hire and manage talent, right?
It's really about creative ecosystems. I mean, Tony's got it in spades, and he's not afraid of hiring people that are a little bit strange. I mean, I met a girl who has rainbow hair, and that's basically a good sign.
Right. That's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's coming out, and it'll be out everywhere, right? September 20. What'd you say?
Yeah. In fact,
26th?
it's going in 26th,
Yeah.
and it's going to be translated into 14 languages right now.
Wow.
I don't even know what all 14 of them are.
So can people pre-order it now on
Yeah.
Amazon or?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you can do that even in your seat.
Right.
All right, next question over here.
Yeah, I guess this is related to your memory lapses, but you said Steve Jobs had 2 to 3 characteristics that are good or whatever. You only said 1, which is act. So what are the other 2? And then another separate question is, as an adult, what can we do to jumpstart our learning or continue education? You know, like I just graduated from college in 2009, and I can feel my brain getting rusty, right? So I'm kind of thinking like, okay, what do I need to do to get out of that? So Steve Jobs, other
Steve Jobs,
characteristics,
2 and 3.
how to learn.
We had 1 act. 2
Is maintain intensity.
stay intense.
You know, he was really, really intense in everything that he did.
In a good way or a bad way? Like aggressive? Like me on coffee is aggressive. Like how would you?
Well, let's just say that he was intense in the way he pursued problems. He would just not give up and worry things on a very, very intense basis. And just work your butt off. I mean, he was one of the few employees. I mean, I probably had in my business career 20 or 30 people that I'd regularly find, you know, on a futon under their bed, under their desk.
Wow.
When I'd show up in the morning.
Didn't stop ever.
Just didn't stop.
Okay. And then the second question was, how do you keep your brain sharp?
This is one that I'm really working on right now. And first of all, everybody should go to multiple trade shows that aren't in your core business.
Oh, cool.
I mean, and here in Las Vegas, you have them just going on. So every 2 weeks, go to a trade show. I've learned something from every trade show I've ever gone to, with the possible exception I found myself in a carpet trade show one time.
Carpet
and,
trade
and
show?
everybody was all wrapped up over shag versus cut pile. and somehow it just didn't resonate with me.
Right.
But
I can see that.
But that, well, Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
I just wandered into a factory automation show, and they had all these things that were run by pneumatic cylinders. And I'd heard of pneumatic cylinders, but I'd never really thought about them. And all of a sudden, I saw all these things, and I thought, boy, these are really neat. I said, how many operations can you get on that? Oh, somewhere between 30 and 50 million. Wow, that's a lot of operations. I said, that must be, how much is that cylinder? $2.
Wow.
Chuck E. Cheese was born.
Light bulb went on, yeah.
Because I wanted to do animation, something that was cool in the restaurants. But in a restaurant, maintenance is crappy, you know, and it just has to work.
Right.
You just can't have it not work. And all of a sudden, I saw a way that I could make it work. And the animals, very, you know, they, except for an appendicitis once in a while, they would just run and run.
And so from that particular story, did you come up with the idea of the restaurant and then think about how you could create those figures? Or
No.
Or how did that go? Was it
What I
the
really wanted to do, Chuck E.
mouse or
Cheese
the-
was actually started inside Atari as vertical integration towards the market. I told you, we were selling machines for $1,000 to $1,500, and over their life, they'd make 15 to 20,000. So it didn't take a rocket scientist to say I was on the wrong side of that equation.
Right.
But I didn't want to, the scarce resource was the location. Like, you know, if you went to a mall, one of the guys that we were selling machines to had that location, and we didn't want that. And if you went down to Joe's Bar, some other guy had got that. So I said, okay, we got to build our own location. And so Chuck E. Cheese is actually an arcade with a restaurant sort of as part of the you know, as sort of tacked on. You ever
See, I didn't see it that way as a little kid. I thought there was the
Yeah.
other way around. You
Well,
got me.
And the,
No, you did. I mean, I was
Yeah.
fascinated by the creatures that were moving around and singing.
yeah, but the actual, the creatures were a head fake. If we hadn't had those, a kid saying, I want to go
Play
to
games. Yeah.
to Joe's Pizza that has all the games, parents would say, oh, you know.
No, yeah.
it's not-
Rots your brain, that kind of thing.
Well, see, what kids are really smart at manipulating their parents. And so what you want to do is give them ammunition, where you say, I want to go see Chucky, I want to go see Chucky. Chucky was free.
Right.
If they say, I want to go play games, I want to go play games, they think too expensive,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So it was all a big head fake.
It works.
Yeah.
Worked. For sure. So let's take another question.
Question back here.
Okay.
On doing things, you mentioned things that take you towards life and things that take you away from life. Could you give a few defining examples of each?
Yeah. When my kids were growing up, I was constantly in competition with the television set. And to me, television is escapism. Reading a book often is escapism. You're basically learning some, but you're really not engaging life. You're basically engaging in somebody else's life. And for me, television was the enemy. And so whenever my kids were watching TV, I'd make fun of them and tell them that their brains were being sucked out and things like that. But more than that, I felt that it was important that I had an environment that was more interesting. So my house had a lab and a workshop, and I always had a lot of tools around and a lot of plastic and stuff. I mean, I can remember one of the first big fights I had with my wife was about giving my 4-year-old a glue gun. And Oh, yeah, yeah.
Wow, hot glue gun.
And she said that he's going to burn himself. And I said, yeah, but he'll figure out that he doesn't need to do that anymore.
It's true.
And there is nothing better at gluing two things together than a hot glue gun.
Right,
You know,
you're right.
all it has to do is cool down a little bit, and
And it's
pieces
safer
are
than
pretty
super
stuck.
glue because that's like toxic, right? So,
Yeah. So, you know, my kids grew up with glue guns and tools and cuts and scrapes, and you know, they all healed and they lost no limbs, and that's all good. They at various times almost burned the house down, but that's as to be expected.
Yeah, it's respectable.
I would give them a new tool set at every Christmas. You know, this little thing with screwdrivers and pliers and a multimeter. You know, and they'd lose them between then and the next Christmas. And so
refresh.
but then pretty soon we had so many tools in the environment that wherever you wanted to be, there was some tools.
So you basically were urging them to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All my kids have turned out to be makers. They're all handy. They all know how to do stuff.
Right.
And none of them watch TV. You know, at all. And it's interesting. We all have TVs in our houses, but nobody watches them. Well, Game of Thrones.
One exception. There you go. Next question over here. You got it?
Hi, Nolan. How do you feel about the role that games have to play in learning?
Well, games, I really think it's the brain science of games. I mean, the definition of a game is kind of loosey-goosey. You know, doing things against time. I mean, I don't believe we should score things in education. I think that kids start to peg themselves as being smart or dumb based on their speed of data acquisition, which in the big field of things is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, if you throw a baseball faster, yeah, that's good for being a pitcher. But if it takes you an extra 10 minutes to do a cognitive decision on some other things, you know, I know a particular scientist who is slow as anything, but his work is incredible. And so I think that I'm not a big believer in badges and awards because it tends to incentivize the people who are already incented and further depress the kids who are struggling a little bit. And so gamification of learning, it's kind of what we're doing, but it's based on solid brain science. And you know, leveling up, that's adaptive, you know, in that sort of thing. Oh, have you ever played The Incredible Machine? It was an old Sierra thing where.
I've never played that. Anybody here play that?
Oh, I mean,
a couple.
I mean, there was mice and cats and cheese, and the mouse would chase the cheese, and the cat would chase the mouse, and you had to have these puzzles that were solved by, you know, bombs and things falling and things that you could switch on. You had to know physics to save the damn mouse.
Did you save it?
Often.
So I think we have time for maybe one more.
Who's that lucky
question.
one more person?
Who wants this most? That was a good face.
Rawr. I actually, so that we can all benefit from your brilliant slides, would like to know, am I finding that on SlideShare, or are you sharing the secret URL with us?
Sure, hey, I'll post something.
Yeah.
Where should I do it? Go into nolanbushnell.com.
Send it to us. We can also post about it.
And I'll post some stuff.
Yep.
I've been going to do it anyway, and I might as well
What the heck, right?
get me off. Right.
Yeah. Your book's coming out too. So,
Yes.
So that'd be another thing you can post about.
Oh, and remember, you have to buy a lot of the books.
Right. We talked about that, but I just want to reiterate.
Yeah, right.
Need to move some books.
I'm
One more?
being lobbied really
There's one
hard
here
over
too. So let's do two more questions. Come
Yeah,
on.
we're having too much
Yeah,
fun.
we're having fun. This is fun.
So you're talking about creativity and what a challenge it is in the video game market, being that you are Mr. Atari. The console game, and this is very self-centering for me to ask this question. The console gaming world is becoming very stale and stagnant. However, the world of iOS, the world of creative games coming, cut the rope, all that other stuff. What's the direction that's best for people to really focus on in terms of where is it going next? Is it going to be iOS as the platform of choice in the future, or I mean, is console gaming like the arcade cabinet one day just?
Where do you see it going?
I think neither. I'm always looking for the next big thing. I think that there's 4 trends that I think are really cool. 1, Google Glasses. They're going to be a game platform. 2, Oculus Rift. It was a Kickstarter, big doing. 3, immersive play. And that is where you mash up a story and a game experience. Go into Versix.com. My 19-year-old has got an installation right now in which you and a team of your friends can go in and save the great wolf, which needs to be saved. And it's in the Great Wolf Lodge, and he's got that. And actually, he's talking with Tony right now about maybe bringing a Versix experience down here.
Your son is, not the wolf, right?
Huh?
Your son is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the third thing is a lot of the games, I think that we need micro mesh networks. And there's some technology coming in which I can, my phone or my object can know within a few centimeters of how far it is away from your phone.
Right. It's pretty crazy.
And when that happens, magical things can happen in the gaming world. Because what you didn't realize, there is an alternative universe right here, right now, populated by evil monkeys.
I didn't know this. Can you tell us?
No,
Okay.
most people don't.
Yeah, this is terrifying.
They think that when they put their headphones in their pocket and pull them out all tangled, that it just happened that way.
It's the monkeys.
It was the monkeys.
I have that problem every single day.
Exactly, the
Yeah.
damn monkeys.
That's the damn monkeys.
And so basically, through your devices, you can see this alternative universe, and you have to get rid of them
That's pretty cool.
through a lot of really devious ways. Anyway.
All right, we've got one more question. Last one, right here.
I'll just try. Your educational process, does this work for all ages? Does this have some implications for retraining people, re-educating people? There's so many disruptive technology, things are changing, and to, there's lots of training and lots of new thoughts to be processed here. And what's the implication of your process?
It turns out that this stuff works for whatever age, because what we're really trying to do is change pathways. And the pathways are very facile. Now, do you want to really know how to really up your game? Get your heart rate up to 80% of max for 20 minutes and then learn something. When you exercise aggressively, your brain secretes this protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And it's been called miracle grow for the brain. And what it really is just nothing more than precursor protein for dendrite and axon growth. And the theory is, though it's not been proven yet, but there's a lot of work going on and studying right now, that if you exercise before you learn, that a lot of what you're learning in the new process is actually going into hardware. You're actually building dendrites around that
what you're learning.
concept and things like that.
Interesting.
And there's a book by a good friend of mine called John Ratty. He's a Harvard psychiatrist, and he has solved some things with exercise that's really extraordinary. His book is named Spark,
Spark.
Highly recommend it.
Okay. That's interesting. So along those same lines, this is, I don't know if this is true or not, but I lived by it in college. Exercise was definitely something we used to get rid of stress, and not necessarily exercise right before you had to study or something like that, but it would help you maintain your flow. So I could see that being really important. But then the other thing that I don't know if this was just an old wives' tale or whatever, but the state that you're in when you learned was a state that you would best remember. Is that true? Because I know that a lot of times we would, if we had a big event, maybe some kind of cocktail hour or a party, maybe the night before in a big test, we'd have to then get in that same state the next day in order to do well. Is that true?
It actually is amazingly true. In fact, have you ever heard the cinnamon stick rule?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, this is a total cheat. And I wasn't going to tell anybody yet, but while you're studying math, suck on a cinnamon toothpick. When you're studying, history, suck on a clove toothpick. When you're studying, biology, suck on a peppermint toothpick.
Okay. Then what?
Then when you take the test, you
Do the same.
do the same thing.
And it helps.
15 to 20%.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. See, I'd never heard that one. I had heard something about eating saltines while you're studying helps do something, and of course I was doing that.
You can do those. It's all the same thing.
Right.
What you really want to do is create a thought state.
Okay. Right.
And then to create keys to get the other thought state.
So it sparks it.
Right.
Hence the name Spark. Back to the book. But that was using exercise.
Right.
Interesting. Very interesting. That was our last question. Let's hear it for Nolan Bushnell. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Oh, just a second.
Okay.
Political announcement.
Announcement.
I'm on this hobby horse of full disclosure, and I want all of the check registers for city, county, state governments to be put online.
That would be great.
And I believe that there will be enough people that can, if you have the raw data, you can catch the scoundrels.
That would be interesting.
And there's a lot of scoundrels going on right now. Anyway.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.